Okay, so before I go any further with the details of my story of how I lost my mind, I need to take a moment to do a disclaimer or a clarification on behalf of my family, who I love very much and who I don't wish to hurt or embarrass ever. But unfortunately, a project like this, there's no way around it, because telling my story requires telling stories of my family, and my family is dysfunctional, because all families are dysfunctional, all of them, every single one. There's no such thing as a freaking wholesome, no problem family. That's a lie that the liberal media tells us. It just doesn't happen. And I realized this, I was thinking about this morning when I was trying to share with Ian the gist of these messages I'm recording. And when I told him that the summary at the end of it all that I'd concluded was that pornography addiction was the source of my life falling apart, which he was not a fan of. He rolled his eyes, got very short with me, was not pleased, and I could tell by the tone of his voice and the gruffness of his comments, it was him thinking, oh, there she goes again, blaming me for her problems and all of those sorts of things, which is how my family is every time I've tried to share this story with them, the story of my psychosis, the story of how it happened, how they fit into it, all of these things. They all have the same reaction, which is to look at me as though I am defending my descent into madness, that I am not taking responsibility for my decisions that were part of it, and that I'm making excuses for being a fuck up. And they wish that I would just stop and take accountability. And that's the thing, is that I have taken accountability. And what they're missing is that I'm not doing any of those things. This is not a defense. This is not a defense. My story is not a defense. It's the closest you come to a reporting of the facts. It's just a reporting of the facts. This is how I got to where I'm at. This is how I went from point A to point B. And there's no value judgments attached to it from my perspective. It's not about value judgments. Like pornography addiction, why would I be upset about Ian having a pornography addiction when there were times when I had one as well? Certainly. When it's not just him, it's a cultural addiction to pornography. It's a species addiction to pornography. And we justify it. We justify it with our science and etc. We say things like sex and violence are naturally conflated in the human brain. They're so closely related, we can't pull them apart. Except if you look at the other things about it, violence is not a natural human characteristic either. You can tell it's not. Just think about it. In order to get people to kill in war, to go to the military and be able to hold a gun to another human being, we have to break brains that are young and still developing. And then in spite of doing that, they still come home and veterans commit suicide at a rate of 27 per day? We are not built for violence. We are not built for violence, and our sex is not meant to be intertwined with violence. It is a break that happened somewhere in our history that for some reason we have kept emulating and kept repeating intentionally, probably, I'm guessing, because it makes money, which is another thing humans do, which doesn't make any sense, because all the other animals on the planet were like, hey, I'm a cow, I need some grass. There's some grass over there, I'm gonna go eat it. But then humans were like, hey, I'm a human, I eat grass. There's some grass over there, I'm gonna pay this dude 5 shiny rocks to go bring me that grass. And then I'm gonna charge this other dude 10 shiny rocks to get some of my grass. Like, we invented all these extra steps for no reason. They don't make sense. Humans don't make sense. So I don't do that personally. That's not something I do. Sometimes in the moment I have judged people, but as a general whole thing, and definitely when I step back and look at it, value judgments are not on my plate. They're not things that I do. I don't judge people for addiction. I don't judge people for all kinds of things. I'm not perfect, but this is my general philosophy. And with family and relationships, things get screwed up over the years. They see the worst parts of us when we are young, and then they hold on to that. And if you're like me, if someone's like me, those worst parts of yourself become obvious, and you realize you need to fix them. And in order to do that, you block everyone out. You kick everyone out. You push everyone away. You do not let anyone close to you for years and years and years while you fix those things that hurt them, because you don't want to hurt them anymore. You don't want to hurt them anymore. And then before you know it, 15, 20 years have passed, and no one has any idea who you are anymore. And they're still throwing things at you that you did 15 years ago. And they're still judging you for things you did 10 years ago. And they're still qualifying your inability to operate or function by things that haven't applied to you in decades. In decades. And that's where I'm at. That's why I have to tell this story to the internet and not to my family. I would like to resolve it personally there, but it's never going to happen. But I think my story has value, so I'm going to share it. I'm going to share it, and I'm apologizing beforehand for any pain or embarrassment this causes my family. I know I've already let you down enough because I was one of those kids that was supposed to go somewhere. I was supposed to do something. I was supposed to be a famous actress or a famous author or president someday. All of my test scores said so. My teachers all predicted I was destined for greatness, and I did not live up to that. I got knocked up at 19 and had my first baby when I was 20. And I spent the past 20 years feeling terrible for that, feeling like a failure. And then with my psychosis, I learned that I don't care anymore. I don't care what people think about me. I don't. And I realized that all of those failures and rejections that I was carrying around in my heart that were keeping me so low to the ground that my family was so embarrassed of were never mine in the first place. I never wore those things. I never destined myself for greatness. That was not what I wanted to do. If anyone had asked me when I was a kid, all I wanted was to be a mommy. That's why I played with my dolls and ponies all the time. That's all that I wanted, was to be a mom and to help people, to be a princess. Specifically, because by my estimate, when I was a kid, princesses wore pretty dresses and did things like fed poor people and read books to children and visited countries after earthquakes. Princess Diana was my idol, and that was what she did all the time. She wore fashionable dresses and she helps people, and that is what I do now, today, in my life. I am fashionable and I help people. I don't have a castle, and that's fine. When I was a kid, I thought I would have a castle, but that's because I was born in the fucking 1980s in the United States of America. At that point, it was still possible to work hard and buy yourself a castle through hard work, right? Am I right? Millennials, we know. We had that dream. We are the dying dream of the American dream. That's what we did. That's what we got. There's no castles for any millennials anymore. That's not going to happen. And it's fine. I am everything I wanted to be when I was a kid. I am who I wanted to be when I was a kid. I am a good person. I help people. I have kids. I'm a mom. My kids are all teenagers. They don't want anything to do with me except for have me chauffeur them around. That's fine. I have other things. I have more time to help people now. And do whatever my kid, drop whatever's going on and help my kids as soon as they need it, which is what I do. I'm a good mom, a good person, a good helper, a good member of my community. I do it in unusual ways, and I haven't always been the ideal role model for how you should behave. But I definitely am on top of it now. And I have no shame about it, because I know what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. I know where I'm going, what I want in my life. And I can honestly say, I don't think I'm a fuck up. And I don't have any regrets. I have none. And I'm happier than I've ever been in my entire life. And I think that as much as my family loves me and wants the best for me, that there's things that they could learn from me as well. And so that's why I'm putting it out there now. Try to listen to this story like I'm not your sister, and I'm not your daughter, and I'm not your ex-wife. Try to listen to this story like I'm just another stranger on the street. It's that simple. Don't take it personally, because it's not, and it never has been.